If you dance this waltz, I'll give you my fiancé to marry him." The billionaire's fiancé laughed. The crystal chandeliers of the Ashford estate sparkled like fallen stars, casting dancing shadows across the marble floor of the grand ballroom. Elena Martinez stood in the doorway, her cleaning supplies clutched tightly in her weathered hands, staring at the magnificent space she'd scrubbed 1,000 times but never truly inhabited. At 27, Elena had spent the last 5 years working as a maid in billionaire James Ashford's sprawling mansion. She knew every corner of this place: the quiet library where morning light pooled on Persian rugs, the kitchen that smelled of fresh bread and possibility, and this ballroom, this beautiful, haunting ballroom where she sometimes allowed herself to dream. Tonight was different. Tonight, the estate buzzed with preparation for James's engagement party. His fiancée, Victoria Huntington, a 29-year-old socialite with a pedigree as pristine as her porcelain skin, had arrived early with an entourage of wedding planners and photographers. Elena had just finished polishing the last of the French doors when she heard it, a waltz drifting from the sound system someone had left on. Strauss, The Blue Danube, her mother's favorite. She closed her eyes, and suddenly she wasn't a maid anymore. She was 8 years old again, standing on her father's shoes in their tiny apartment in Queens, learning the steps her grandmother had taught him in the old country. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The rhythm of her heritage, the music of her heart. Before she could stop herself, Elena set down her supplies and stepped onto the gleaming floor. Her sensible work shoes whispered against the marble as she began to move, her arms extended as if holding an invisible partner. She rose on her toes, spun, her simple gray uniform becoming a ball gown in her imagination. The music swelled, and so did her confidence. This was her secret rebellion, her tiny claim to beauty in a life built on service. Her eyes remained closed as she glided across the floor, executing turns and flourishes her grandmother had drilled into her during those precious Saturday mornings before the cancer took her. She didn't hear the footsteps gathering in the doorway. Well, well, well. The voice cut through the music like a knife through silk. How absolutely precious. Elena's eyes flew open, her feet stumbling to a halt. There, framed in the ballroom entrance, stood Victoria Huntington in a cream designer dress that probably cost more than Elena's annual salary. Behind her clustered several other guests who'd arrived early, society friends with champagne flutes and cruel smiles. Elena's face burned. "I'm sorry, Miss Huntington. I was just what? Playing princess." Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. She glided into the room, her heels clicking with authority. "James, darling, come see what your help has been doing on company time." James Ashford emerged from behind the group, and Elena's stomach dropped. At 35, he was everything the magazine said: tall, commanding, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and eyes the color of a winter storm. But in the 5 years Elena had worked for him, he'd always been kind, always respectful. Now those eyes were unreadable as they settled on her. "I apologize, Mr. Ashford," Elena whispered, bending to retrieve her cleaning supplies. "It won't happen again." "Oh, don't stop on our account," Victoria purred, circling Elena like a predator. "Actually, I have a marvelous idea. A little entertainment for the evening." She turned to James with a glittering smile. "Darling, let's make this interesting. If your little maid can dance this entire waltz, properly, mind you, I'll let you marry her instead of me." The room erupted in laughter. Someone refilled their champagne glass. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. She'd endured many indignities in her life: poverty, loss, the casual condescension of the wealthy. But this felt different. This felt personal. "Victoria, that's enough," James said quietly, but his fiancée waved him off. "I'm serious. Look at her. She clearly fancies herself quite the dancer. Let's see if she can put her money where her feet are." Victoria gestured grandly to the floor. "Go ahead, sweetie. Show us what you've got. Though I warn you, I attended the Royal Ballet School. I know real dancing when I see it." Elena looked at the floor, at her worn shoes, at her trembling hands. Every instinct told her to flee, to disappear into the service corridors where she belonged. But then she thought of her grandmother, who had danced in the face of hardship, who had taught her that grace wasn't about money or status, it was about spirit. Slowly, Elena straightened her spine. She met Victoria's mocking gaze with steady eyes. "All right," she said softly. "I'll dance." The laughter in the room shifted, surprise rippling through the small crowd. Victoria's smile faltered for just a moment before reconstructing itself into something sharper. "Wonderful." She clapped her hands together. "Someone restart the music. Let's make this a proper performance." She turned to James, looping her arm through his. "Darling, come sit with me. We'll be the judges." James's expression remained unreadable, but Elena thought she saw something flicker in those storm-gray eyes. Concern, perhaps, or was it curiosity? He allowed Victoria to lead him to the ornate chairs along the wall, where the other guests were already settling in like spectators at a gladiatorial arena. Elena stood alone in the center of the ballroom, the expanse of marble suddenly feeling as vast as an ocean. The chandeliers cast their relentless light down on her, illuminating every thread of her worn uniform, every scuff on her practical shoes. She could feel their eyes on her, assessing, judging, waiting for her to fail. The music began again. The blue Danube filled the cavernous space, each note a memory, each measure a heartbeat. Elena closed her eyes and let herself remember. Her grandmother's apartment had smelled like cinnamon and old books. On Saturday mornings, they would push the furniture against the walls, and her grandmother would transform from a tired immigrant worker into something magical, a dancer whose body remembered the ballrooms of Vienna, even if her hands were rough from American factories. "Feel the music, Mija," her grandmother would say. "Don't just hear it, let it move through you like water, like wind. Dancing is not about steps. It's about story." Elena began to move. Her first steps were tentative, her body fighting against the weight of shame and fear. But then the music swelled, and muscle memory took over. Her arms rose gracefully, her back straightened, and her feet began to glide across the marble floor in the classic waltz pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. She spun, and her simple uniform seemed to float around her. She dipped, extended, her movements growing more confident with each measure. This wasn't the choreographed perfection of a ballet school. This was something older, something that came from the soul rather than the studio. In the chairs, Victoria's smile began to fade. The other guests had stopped whispering. Elena didn't notice. She was lost now, dancing with ghosts, with her grandmother, with her father who died when she was 19, with all the dreams she'd carefully folded away to survive in this world of service and silence. Each turn was a conversation with memory, each step a prayer for the life she might have lived. The waltz had no partner, but Elena danced as if she held someone precious in her arms. She filled the empty space with such emotion that the absence itself became presence. Her eyes remained closed, tears squeezing from beneath her lashes as the music carried her through movements she hadn't performed in years. She was approaching the song's crescendo when she sensed rather than saw a shift in the room. The energy changed. Someone gasped. Elena's eyes opened just as a hand, warm, steady, slipped into hers. James Ashford stood before her, his jacket discarded, his white shirt gleaming in the chandelier light. He'd abandoned his seat beside Victoria and crossed the ballroom floor in silence. Now he stood in dance position, his right hand finding its place at her waist, his left hand clasping hers with gentle firmness. "May I?" he asked quietly, his voice meant only for her. Elena's breath caught. Up close, she could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes, the small scar above his eyebrow she'd always wondered about, the vulnerability hiding beneath his usual composure. She should refuse. This was madness. But the music was still playing, and his hand was warm at her waist, and something in his eyes was asking a question that had nothing to do with dancing. Elena nodded. And then they were moving together. James led with a confidence that surprised Elena, his steps assured and practiced. This wasn't the awkward shuffling of a man who'd only danced at obligatory charity functions. This was someone who knew the waltz, who understood its rhythm and romance. "I didn't know you could dance," Elena whispered as they swept across the floor. "My mother insisted," James replied, guiding her through a turn. She believed a gentleman should be able to waltz properly. "I spent every Saturday of my teenage years at dance lessons, much to my father's dismay." The admission created an unexpected intimacy between them. Elena felt herself relaxing into his lead, trusting the pressure of his hand at her waist, the gentle signals that told her when to turn, when to step back, when to rise onto her toes. They moved together, as if they'd danced 1,000 times before. James matched his steps to hers, neither dominating nor disappearing, creating a true partnership in motion. When Elena's muscle memory led her into a more complex sequence, a series of quick turns her grandmother had taught her, James followed seamlessly, his eyes lighting up with something that looked like joy. "Where did you learn a dance like this?" he asked as they swept past the seated guests. "My grandmother. She was from Vienna." Dancing was, Elena's voice caught. It was her way of remembering home. James's hand tightened slightly at her waist, a gesture of understanding. "My mother learned in Vienna too, before the war forced her family to leave." The revelation hung between them as they danced, adding layers of shared history to their movements. They weren't just dancing anymore. They were honoring the ghosts who taught them, the old world masters who'd passed down this beautiful tradition across oceans and generations. Elena risked a glance toward the seated guests. Victoria's face had transformed from mocking amusement to something darker, her jaw clenched tight. The other society friends watched with open mouths, their champagne glasses forgotten. But Elena found she didn't care anymore. The anxiety that had gripped her when she first took the floor had dissolved, replaced by something pure and transcendent. In this moment, she wasn't a maid and James wasn't a billionaire. They were simply two people moving in perfect harmony, telling a story written in three-quarter time. The music built toward its final crescendo, and James pulled her closer, his face inches from hers. Elena could feel the warmth radiating from him, could smell the subtle scent of his cologne mixed with something earthier, the smell of a man who'd crossed a ballroom floor to defend someone who couldn't defend herself. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me." James's eyes held hers, and in them Elena saw something she'd never allowed herself to imagine: recognition, respect, and something deeper that made her heart hammer against her ribs. "I've always seen you, Elena," he said quietly. "Every morning when you arrange fresh flowers in the library because you know I read there. Every evening when you leave my coffee exactly the way I like it before I even realize I want it. Every time you sing softly while you work, thinking no one can hear." Elena's breath caught. He knew her name. He'd been watching too. The final measures of the waltz demanded their attention. Together, they executed the closing sequence, a series of sweeping turns that carried them across the entire length of the ballroom. Elena's simple uniform billowed around her, and for a moment, she felt like the Princess Victoria had mocked her for pretending to be. But better than that, she felt like herself. Fully, completely herself. As the last notes faded, James pulled her into the traditional ending position, a deep dip that left Elena's back arched, her hair falling loose from its practical bun, her face tilted up toward his. They held the pose as silence filled the ballroom, both breathing hard, neither willing to break the spell. Then the room erupted. But it wasn't laughter this time. The applause started with one person, a white-haired gentleman Elena recognized as Mr. Thornton, one of James's oldest business associates. He rose from his seat, his hands coming together in thunderous claps that echoed through the ballroom. Within seconds, others joined him. The woman in the sapphire dress, the couple from the gallery opening. Even the stern-faced wedding planner was standing, her professional composure cracked by a genuine smile. Everyone was standing. Everyone except Victoria. James carefully brought Elena upright, his hand steadying her as she found her balance. She stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, overwhelmed by the wave of applause washing over her. These people, these wealthy, powerful people who'd been prepared to mock her, were now honoring her with a standing ovation. "Brava," called Mr. Thornton, his cultured voice carrying over the applause. That was the finest waltz I've seen in 30 years. Absolutely magnificent. Where did you train, dear? Asked the woman in sapphire, her earlier derision replaced by genuine curiosity. Elena opened her mouth, but no words came. She looked helplessly at James, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, pride mixed with something tender, something dangerous. I didn't train formally, Elena finally managed. My grandmother taught me, in our apartment in Queens. Queens. The woman pressed a hand to her chest. My God, natural talent like that. James, wherever did you find her? Elena has worked here for 5 years, James said, his voice carrying a strange edge. His eyes swept across the room, and Elena saw several guests have the grace to look ashamed. She's been here almost every day, and yet this is the first time most of you have truly looked at her. The applause faltered, an uncomfortable silence creeping into its faces. Victoria finally stood, her cream dress rustling with sharp movements. Her face was a mask of composure, but red splotches colored her elegant neck. Well, she said, her voice tight as a wire. I suppose the help has hidden talents we never expected. How quaint. Quaint. Mr. Thornton snorted. That was extraordinary, Victoria. Your ballet school never taught you to dance with such passion. Victoria's eyes flashed. Passion is one thing, Thornton. Technique is another. Any fool can flail around with feeling. True artistry requires discipline, training, refinement, things that can't be learned in a queen's apartment. You're wrong, James said quietly. The room went still. Elena felt his hand still at her waist, warm and steady. What did you say? Victoria's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. James stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Elena. I said you're wrong. I've watched you dance at a dozen charity balls, Victoria. Your technique is flawless. But I've never seen you dance like Elena just did, like the music was part of your soul instead of just steps you memorized. How dare you compare me to the help? Her name is Elena, James interrupted, his voice hardening. Elena Martinez. She's worked in this house for 5 years, and she deserves to be addressed by her name, not by her job title. The red splotches on Victoria's neck spread to her face. She laughed, but it sounded brittle. My God, are you actually defending her? This is about that ridiculous bet I made, isn't it? You can't possibly. She stopped, her eyes widening as she looked between James and Elena. Oh, this is rich. Elena felt ice forming in her stomach. She tried to step back, to put distance between herself and James, but his hand at her waist tightened almost imperceptibly. You actually have feelings for her, Victoria said wonderingly. The billionaire and the maid. How deliciously cliché. Her laugh grew sharper. Did you think I wouldn't notice? The way you watch her when she's working? The way you find excuses to be in whatever room she's cleaning? James's jaw tightened. Victoria. No, please, let's be honest for once. Victoria spread her arms wide, addressing the room. Let's all acknowledge the elephant in the ballroom. My fiancé has a crush on the help. How absolutely scandalous. What will the society pages say? Elena found her voice. Miss Huntington, Mr. Ashford has always been nothing but professional. Oh, spare me. Victoria cut her off. You're not that naive, sweetheart. You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you? Dancing alone in his ballroom, looking all tragic and beautiful. Very calculating for someone from Queens. That's enough. James's voice cracked like a whip. Elena did nothing wrong. She was dancing to music she loved, in a moment she thought was private. You turned it into a spectacle. You humiliated her in front of guests. And when she had the courage to accept your cruel challenge, she exceeded every expectation. He paused, his gray eyes hard as steel. She showed more grace in 5 minutes than you've shown in the 2 years we've been together. The ballroom held its collective breath. Victoria's composure finally shattered. How dare you? I am Victoria Huntington. My family has more money than God. I could buy and sell this little maid 1,000 times over. And yet she's the one who danced like an angel, Mr. Thornton interjected dryly. Money can't buy what we just witnessed, Victoria. Some things actually have to come from the heart. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. This is insane. James, if you don't send this woman away right now.
No.
The single word dropped into the silence, like a stone into still water. Elena stared at James. Mr. Ashford, please, I should go. Don't. He finally turned to face her fully, and what Elena saw in his eyes made her knees weak. Don't apologize. Don't diminish what just happened. That dance was the most honest thing I've witnessed in years. James, Victoria's voice shook. You're making a mistake. This is just some romantic notion. You can't possibly throw away everything we've built for some. Some what, Victoria? James's voice was quiet now, but it filled the room. Some maid? Someone beneath us? Is that what you were going to say? Victoria's silence was answer enough. James nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. Then, deliberately, he reached up and began removing the engagement ring from Victoria's finger where it rested, except she wasn't wearing it. Elena remembered seeing it on the side table in the study earlier, where Victoria had removed it while getting her nails done. Instead, James straightened and looked at Victoria directly. You made a bet. You said if Elena could dance this waltz, I could marry her instead of you. It was a joke. Victoria shrieked. Was it? James's eyes swept the room. Everyone here heard you. A bet made in front of witnesses. I believe in honoring one's word. He turned back to Victoria. Our engagement is over. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Several guests began speaking at once. Someone's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor. Victoria's face had gone from red to white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Elena felt the world tilting. Mr. Ashford, you can't. This is insane. Please, I never meant. I know you didn't, James said, and there was something almost like wonder in his voice. That's exactly why this matters. Elena, for 2 years I've been planning a marriage to someone I don't love. Someone who just proved, definitively, that she doesn't have the capacity to see people as human beings if they're not in her tax bracket. You're upset. Victoria found her voice, though it trembled. You're not thinking clearly. James, we're perfect together. Everyone says so. Our families, our businesses. Our merger, you mean? James's smile was bitter. That's what this has always been, hasn't it? A merger, not a marriage. That's how our world works. Victoria's voice rose desperately. You know this. Marriage isn't about dancing and passion and whatever romantic nonsense you think you saw tonight. It's about partnership, about building something lasting. I agree, James interrupted. Marriage should be about partnership. That's exactly what I saw tonight. Elena and I danced as partners, equals trusting each other, moving together, creating something beautiful. When was the last time you and I were truly partners, Victoria? When did we last create anything beautiful together? Elena's head was spinning. This couldn't be happening. She was going to wake up in her small apartment. This would all be a fever dream induced by exhaustion and too much floor polish fumes. But James's hand was still at her waist, warm and solid and real. Mr. Ashford, Elena tried again, forcing strength into her voice. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this isn't the answer. You can't blow up your life over one dance. I'm just a maid. This isn't some fairy tale. No, James agreed, and his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. It's not a fairy tale. It's real life. And in real life, I just watched someone face humiliation and cruelty with dignity and grace. I watched someone transform my ballroom into something magical with nothing but passion and memory. I watched someone be more genuine in 5 minutes than I've been in 5 years. This is ridiculous. Victoria's voice cracked. You don't even know her. She cleans your house, James. She's not. We don't even know anything about her family, her background. I know she lost her grandmother 2 years ago, James said quietly. I know she sends most of her paycheck to her mother, who's fighting breast cancer. I know she takes online courses at night, trying to finish the college degree she had to abandon when her father died. I know she volunteers at a children's hospital on her days off, teaching dance to kids in the cancer ward. Elena's heart stopped. How do you? I pay attention, James said simply. Maybe I should have said something sooner. Maybe I've been a coward, hiding behind propriety and expectations. But I'm done hiding. Mr. Thornton cleared his throat. James, as your friend and advisor, I need to point out that this is quite rash. Perhaps everyone should take a breath, let emotions settle. With respect, Thornton, I've spent my entire adult life being sensible, James said. Building my father's company, making strategic decisions, choosing the appropriate fiancé from the appropriate family. And you know what? I'm miserable. The word hung in the air, raw and honest. Victoria made a sound between a laugh and a sob. So that's it? You're throwing me away for some fantasy? Some pretty woman delusion. I'm ending an engagement that should never have happened, James corrected gently. Victoria, be honest. Are you in love with me? Or are you in love with the idea of being Mrs. James Ashford? For a long moment, Victoria was silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. That's not fair. It's the fairest question I've ever asked you. Victoria's eyes glistened, and Elena felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. For all her cruelty, Victoria was still a human being whose world was crumbling. You'll regret this, Victoria whispered. When the novelty wears off, when reality sets in, you'll realize what a mistake you made. She'll never fit into your world, James. Never. Maybe, James acknowledged. Or maybe my world is what needs to change. Victoria stared at him for a long moment, then her face hardened. Fine. Enjoy your little social experiment. I hope she's worth becoming a laughingstock. She swept toward the door, then paused and turned back. Her eyes found Elena. You think you've won something, but you've just signed up for a lifetime of being the charity case, the project, the maid who seduced the billionaire. Good luck with that. She left in a rustle of cream silk, and after a moment's hesitation, several of the guests followed her. But not all of them. Mr. Thornton remained, shaking his head with a rueful smile. Well, he said, that was the most entertaining engagement party I've ever attended. Though technically, I suppose it's now a disengagement party. A few people laughed nervously. The tension in the room began to ease, like a storm passing. James finally, reluctantly, released Elena's waist. She immediately felt the absence of his warmth, the sudden chill of reality settling in. I should go, she said quietly. I need to. Elena, wait. But she was already backing away, her mind reeling. This is too much. It's all too much. I can't. You need time to think clearly, Mr. Ashford. You just ended your engagement. You can't possibly know what you want right now. I know I don't want you calling me Mr. Ashford anymore, James said. Not after dancing with me like that. That was just a dance. Was it? Their eyes locked, and Elena felt the question reverberate through her entire body. Because no, it hadn't been just a dance. It had been a conversation without words, a confession without speaking, a connection that terrified her with its intensity. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for all of this. She fled the ballroom before he could respond, her worn shoes slapping against the marble as she ran toward the service corridors, toward safety, toward the small, simple life she understood. Behind her, she heard Mr. Thornton say, Let her go, James. She needs time. But so do you, my boy. So do you. Spring came to the Ashford estate with an explosion of cherry blossoms and new beginnings. Elena stood in the garden, a place she'd tended but never truly enjoyed, watching petals drift down like pink snow. She hadn't been inside the mansion in 3 months. After that catastrophic night, she'd submitted her resignation first thing the next morning, slipping the letter under James's study door before he woke. She couldn't stay, not after what had happened, not after she'd inadvertently destroyed his engagement, not after that dance that still haunted her dreams. James had refused to accept her resignation. He'd called, texted, sent letters to her apartment in Queens. Each message saying the same thing. Please come back. We need to talk. What happened wasn't your fault. But Elena knew better. She'd crossed a line she never should have approached. She'd let herself be seen, let herself feel, let herself dance like she mattered in his world. She'd taken a job at a small hotel in Manhattan, cleaning rooms and staying invisible. It paid less, and her mother's medical bills were piling up, but at least she could sleep without dreaming of gray eyes and three-quarter time. Except she couldn't sleep, and the dreams came anyway. So when she'd received the invitation, hand-delivered by a nervous courier to her tiny apartment, she'd almost thrown it away unopened. But curiosity, that dangerous thing, had won out. Elena, I'm hosting a scholarship fundraiser for underprivileged students pursuing arts education. Your story, your grandmother's legacy, your passion for dance, it inspired something. I've established a foundation to ensure kids like the ones you teach at the hospital can access the training they deserve. Please come. Not as an employee, as a guest, as the inspiration for all of this. If you don't want to see me, I'll stay out of sight. But I need you to see what your dance created. James. P.S. The dress code is come as you are. Your work uniform is perfect, or ball gown or jeans. Whatever makes you comfortable. You belong there. Elena had stared at that letter for 3 days before deciding to come. She'd worn her nicest dress, a simple blue cotton sundress from a thrift store, paired with the same worn shoes she'd danced in that night. Now she stood in the garden, watching through the French doors as the ballroom filled with people. But these weren't society elites in designer gowns. They were families, parents and children of all backgrounds, dressed in everything from suits to jeans, milling around displays about the foundation. And in the center, James was kneeling to speak with a small girl in a wheelchair, his expensive suit forgotten as he listened intently to whatever she was saying. He's been like that all afternoon, said a voice beside her. Elena turned to find Mr. Thornton, looking distinguished in a casual blazer. He smiled at her kindly. Hello, my dear. I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure I should. Nonsense. This whole thing is because of you. He gestured to the ballroom. After that night, James couldn't stop thinking about what you'd said, about your grandmother teaching you in a tiny apartment, about dreams and access and opportunity. He liquidated a quarter of his portfolio and established this foundation within 2 weeks. Elena's eyes widened. A quarter. He's a man on a mission. Mr. Thornton chuckled. Also a very lonely man, if you don't mind me saying. Victoria's departure didn't break his heart, but losing you did. He didn't lose me. We were never. Weren't you? The old man's eyes were knowing. I've been watching James since he was a boy. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you that night. Like he'd found something he didn't know he was missing. Elena's throat tightened. It was just one dance. The best things often start with just one moment. Mr. Thornton patted her shoulder. He's not going to pressure you, Elena. He meant what he said in that letter. But I hope you'll at least talk to him. Some chances don't come twice. He walked away, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the sight of James laughing with the children inside. She stood there for a long moment, warring with herself. Then, slowly, she walked toward the French doors. The moment she stepped into the ballroom, heads turned. She saw recognition in some faces, guests who'd been there that night. But instead of judgment, she saw smiles, waves, even a few nods of respect. James must have sensed her presence because he looked up from his conversation with the girl in the wheelchair. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom, and time seemed to stutter. He excused himself and walked toward her, and Elena's heart hammered so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. You came, he said simply. I came. They stood there, 3 feet of marble floor between them, feeling like an ocean. The foundation is incredible, Elena managed. All those children. They deserve what you had, James said. What your grandmother gave you. Beauty and grace and the knowledge that art isn't just for people who can afford it. James, she stopped, realized she'd used his first name, saw his eyes light up at the sound of it. Mr. Ashford. James, he corrected gently. Please. This is too much. The foundation, the invitation, all of it. You didn't have to do this. I know. I wanted to. He took a tentative step closer. Elena, I need to apologize. That night, I put you in an impossible position. I made declarations without considering how they'd affect you. I was so focused on what I was feeling that I didn't stop to think about what you needed. Elena blinked back sudden tears. You have nothing to apologize for. You stood up for me. You defended me when everyone else saw me as a joke. You were never a joke. You were the realest person in that room. James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so unguarded it made Elena's heart ache. These past 3 months have been enlightening. I've had time to think, to really examine my life. And, you know what I realized? What? That I've spent my entire adult life performing. Playing the role of the perfect son, the perfect businessman, the perfect society bachelor. But when I danced with you, I wasn't performing. For the first time in years, I was just me. James, I'm not asking you for anything, he said quickly. I'm not proposing or declaring undying love or any of that. I just want you to know that what happened that night, it changed me, made me braver, made me question everything I thought I knew about what I wanted. Elena wiped at her eyes. It changed me too. I spent 5 years making myself invisible, convinced that wanting more was selfish. You saw me anyway. You danced with me anyway. I'd like to do it again, James said softly. Dance with you. Not in front of an audience, not to prove anything. Just us. As if on cue, music began to play. Not Strauss this time, but something gentler, more modern. Someone must have started the sound system. James extended his hand. May I have this dance, Elena Martinez? Elena looked at his hand, then at his face, at the hope and vulnerability written there. She thought about Victoria's warning, about the impossibility of crossing worlds, about all the very sensible reasons to walk away. Then she thought about her grandmother, who had crossed an ocean to build a new life, who had danced in factory workers' shoes because joy didn't require the perfect setting. Elena placed her hand in James's. They moved together onto the ballroom floor, and this time there were no spectators, no cruel bets, no pressure to perform. Just 2 people swaying gently to music, finding their rhythm, learning each other's steps. I got a job at Manhattan Memorial, Elena said quietly as they danced. In their arts therapy program. Working with children. That's wonderful, James said, and she heard the genuine happiness in his voice. That's perfect for you. It pays better. I can almost cover my mother's treatments now. James's hand tightened at her waist. Elena, I don't want your money, she said firmly. I need you to understand that. If there's going to be anything between us, friendship or more, it can't be about you rescuing me. I don't want to rescue you, James said. I want to know you. I want to hear about your day. I want to know what makes you laugh, what you dream about, what music you listen to when you're alone. Why? Elena searched his face. Be honest. Is this some kind of redemption arc? Am I your way of proving you're not like the rest of them? James stopped dancing. He cupped her face gently in his hands, his gray eyes serious. You want honesty? Here it is. I don't know if we'll work. I don't know if the class difference will be too much to overcome. I don't know if my world will accept you, or if you'll even want to be part of it. I don't have guarantees or promises. Then what do you have? The truth, which is that dancing with you was the first time in 10 years I felt fully alive. That your smile makes my day better. That I've read your college essays, yes, the ones you submitted with your scholarship application to finish your degree, and your mind is extraordinary. That I admire your strength, your compassion, your courage. He paused. And that I'd like the chance to see where this goes, one day at a time, with no expectations beyond tomorrow. Elena felt tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm scared. Me too. What if Victoria was right? What if I never fit into your world? Then maybe we build a new world, James said. One where ballet dancers from Vienna and Queens can teach their grandchildren together. Where worth isn't measured in stock portfolios. Where 2 people can dance just because the music moves them. Elena laughed through her tears. That's very idealistic. Is it working? She looked at him, really looked at him. Not as a billionaire or an employer, but as a man who was just as lost and hopeful as she was. A man who'd crossed a ballroom floor to dance with her twice now, each time choosing her over everything else. Maybe, she whispered, but we start slow. Dates. Getting to know each other. No fairy tale expectations. I can do slow, James agreed. Though I should warn you, I'm going to ask you to dance. A lot. I think I can live with that. They resumed swaying, and around them the ballroom filled with the sounds of children laughing, families talking, hope taking root. The scholarship foundation would change lives. Elena could already see it in the eyes of the young dancers examining the program brochures. Your grandmother would be proud, James said softly. Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her heritage, the gift of her grandmother's love. She'd like you, she said. She always said a good partner makes you better than you could be alone. Then let's be partners, James said, in whatever comes next. As the music swelled and the spring sunlight poured through the French doors, Elena Martinez and James Ashford danced in the center of the ballroom, not as maid and billionaire, not as project and savior, but as two people brave enough to step into uncertainty together. Outside, cherry blossoms continued to fall like blessings, and somewhere in the garden, Elena could almost hear her grandmother's laughter mixing with the waltz. The ending wasn't written yet, but the beginning, the real beginning, was finally here. And it started with a dance,